Part 46. All Heaven's Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 455. 449 Ultimate Weapon. Has the Lord finally come? Chunyuan raised the corners of his mouth upwards, facing the Yvonne-type tyrant in front of him without fear. But at this moment, boom boom. There were two muffled sounds, and two other Yvonne-type tyrants also jumped down from the upper passage, and they surrounded Chunyuan in the form of finished characters. 3. I remember Lin Huo said that these Yvonne-type tyrants were all cloned from the genes of Sergei Vladimir, a total of 10. 2 were killed in Raccoon City before, and now there should be 8 more. It seems that all of them have been dispatched. No, maybe there are 5 from Yi. Chunyuan was still doing calculations with great interest at this time. He never worried about whether Yi would be in danger. For a monster of the level of a tyrant, he could no longer keep up with Yi's movements. Yi completely fights when he wants to fight, and stays when he wants to stay. What answered him was the bowl-sized fist of the Yvonne-type tyrant. Bow, step, punch, all in one go. At the same time, the two Yvonne-type tyrants behind him also grabbed them from behind. Chunyuan just let out a cold snort, kicked his foot on the ground suddenly, his body suddenly moved sideways, and then he kicked on the wall and did a backflip. The 3 Yvonne-type tyrants all flew into the air. But he took out the burst shotgun in mid-air, boom, boom, boom. A violent bombardment. The burst component on the burst shotgun will attach a layer of explosive energy to each shotgun pellet, which will produce a violent explosion when it hits the target. There are at least dozens of pellets in a shotgun, which means dozens of explosions. Because the sound of explosions is too dense, only 2 or 3 explosions are heard now. However, the power produced is real. Hit by the burst shotgun, even the Yvonne-type tyrant staggered, and the white robe used to suppress the mutation of the T-virus on his body was riddled with holes. Chunyuan took 2 steps back again, and continued to fire with the burst shotgun in his hand. Boom! 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 A burst of violent explosions exploded on the Yvonne-type tyrant. The 3 tyrants also turned their heads at this time, covering their heads with their hands and rushing forward. The 6 huge hands immediately sealed off all the spaces in the corridor. But Chunyuan was extremely calm. He aimed at the Yvonne-type tyrant on the left and fired fiercely to slow down the speed of that tyrant. Then, taking advantage of the moment when there was a time difference between the movements of the 3 tyrants, he suddenly exerted force under his feet, and his whole body rushed out like a bullet. Passed through the middle of the 3 tyrants. At the same time, he also threw away the burst shotgun, took out the M41A1 pulse rifle, and squeezed the trigger hard. A flash of lightning flashed from the muzzle of the pulse rifle, and then a large number of 10mm caseless bullets with a muzzle velocity exceeding 2000 meters per second rained down on the 3 Yvonne-type tyrants. Chunyuan backed up while shooting. The powerful force of the pulse rifle beat the Yvonne-type tyrant's body to a point where the Sci-fi sunglasses were smashed, revealing the seriously mutated eyes underneath. Before the second magazine of the pulse rifle was finished, the 3 Yvonne tyrants fell to the ground with a plop and did not move. Chunyuan looked back at the camera he left undamaged on purpose, gestured his middle finger and said, "Is that the kind of thing you want to kill me?" In fact, this is the case with the Yvonne-type tyrant, including other types of tyrants. The biggest advantage is that it is infinitely powerful and invulnerable. But in front of Chunyuan, no matter how powerful they were, they couldn't hit him at all. As for invulnerability, can it withstand the power of the burst shotgun and the M41A1 pulse rifle? Therefore, when the 2 biggest advantages of the tyrant are gone, becoming a lamb to be slaughtered becomes inevitable. Looking at the monitor screen, Woolman Schindler didn't let out that disgusting sharp laugh this time, but the crow skull mask blocked his face, and he couldn't see his current expression. He just leaned on the back of the chair and said slowly, "Open the passage and lead them to TA.L.O.S." Yes. Nikolai Genovaev bowed slightly, and then began to operate on the console. Victor, Wolman Schindler called again. A black shadow flashed, and a figure appeared beside him almost instantly. Nikolai's eyes narrowed slightly. He saw the person coming from the door to Wallman's side, spanning a distance of nearly 10 meters, and it only took 1 second. I only saw that Victor was emitting black air all over his body, and he was still wearing the U.S.S combat uniform on his body. His face could not be seen at all under the cover of the gas mask, but under the lens of the mask, a pair of scarlet eyes were coming. An ominous blood-red light emitted. Coupled with the iron-blue complexion on his arms, it is very obvious that Victor has also been transformed into a Darth Vader. Go to the experiment hall. If you cooperate with TA.L.O.S, you should be able to kill your former big brother, Chen Yuyan? Wolman Schindler asked. Chen Yuyan and Yi will surely die by my sword. Victor said in a low voice. It turned out that the female experimenter was called Yi. Thank you, Victor, at least I know who I ordered to kill. In the future, it will be more convenient to record my results in my diary, GGGG, Wolman Schindler said, and couldn't help the harsh laughter again. However, no one answered. Looking up, Victor disappeared without knowing when. Chen Yuyan found that those annoying undead spirits in front of him had disappeared at some point. They didn't rush forward to attack Chen Yuyan bravely, like moths to a flame, and now they didn't come here to make trouble again. Moreover, one after another code door was opened, and what appeared in front of him was a smooth road. All the way forward, Chen Yuyan saw a huge spherical hall at the end of the passage. This hall is very wide, almost 20 meters in diameter, and above the hall, there is a device that is half biological and half mechanical, like a big disgusting mouth. Chen Yuyan looked at the display screen at the entrance of the hall, and a line of red prompts was displayed. The Lethal Armored Tyrant Organic Combat System, TA.L.O.S, T, Armored Lethal Organic Combat System, is starting. TA.L.O.S. Looks like the Talos Tyrant. Lin Huo told me that this is the ultimate B.O.W product of Umbrella Corporation, a super B.O.W that can compete head-on with the modern army. Chen Yuyan said to himself as he spoke. He stepped into the hall, then come and inspect the goods to see if this thing is so powerful. Maybe after getting its technology, the trump card in my hand will increase again. You have no future. A sullen voice suddenly sounded beside Chen Yuyan. Chen Yuyan's reaction was like lightning. He immediately dodged sideways, and with a bang, a black saber light flashed in front of him. However, when he saw clearly the source of the saber light, he couldn't help shouting, Victor! Why is it you? Tomorrow I will take the kids out to play, please take a day off. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 456. 450 Battle of Talos. It was Victor who appeared in front of Chen Yuyan. All I saw was that he was still wearing the U.S.S cloak-style stealth combat uniform, and he was wearing a gas mask under the cloak, so he couldn't see his face at all. But now his body is full of blackness, and the breath of death is rushing towards his face, making people feel that what is in front of him is not a person, but a corpse that has been dead for hundreds of years. At this moment, Victor was holding a pistol in one hand and a black dagger in the other. Standing in front of Chen Yuyan, he said slowly, "That's right, it's me. I came here specially to get yours head. I'm here to save you." Chen Yuyan frowned and said in a low voice, "I don't need to be rescued, because I have found the right path." Victor's voice darkened. "I chose the road by myself, and I don't want to interfere, but, no matter what, I'm a comrade in arms with you through life and death, at least you should tell me why." Chen Yuyan's face became serious. He shifted his center of gravity down, and slowly squatted down, ready to fight at any time. "For power," Victor replied very simply. "Strength." That's right, strength. When you were training on Nuckford Island, you and I were on par. You were stronger than me, but you were limited. But later, your strength improved by leaps and bounds, leaving me far behind. Behind. This confuses me, because your training intensity is about the same as mine. Why is there such a big gap? Victor said while taking off the gas mask, revealing the iron blue skin and scarlet eyes underneath. Face. He looked like a corpse, but at this moment he had a strange smile on his face. I didn't know until later that you took me to the world of Command and Conquer through time and space. The world is so small. I also understand that it is impossible to catch up with your footsteps by conventional methods. If I want to become stronger and stronger than you, I can only use other methods. Chen sighed softly. You should understand that after I solve the world's affairs, I will give you the same method to become stronger. That's just your leftovers, isn't it? Victor asked rhetorically. If you understand my personality, then you will know that I absolutely did not mean that. And now you have even risked your own life in order to become stronger. Is it worth it? Chen shook his head and said. What is life? Victor asked again. I am biologically dead now. But I can still walk, I can still talk, I can still think, so do you think I am dead now? It seems that you have made up your mind. Yes, I will use your life to witness my strength. If you can do it, then try it. A smile appeared on the corner of Chen mouth, and he pulled out a combat dagger from his personal space. In the next moment, he kicked on the ground violently, and his body shot forward, only to hear a crisp sound, and the daggers of the two collided instantly. At the moment of the collision, Chen frowned. He felt that the power from Victor was only slightly weaker than him. He himself understands that his physical fitness has already far surpassed that of ordinary people, and Victor's increased strength after transforming himself into a black warrior is actually comparable to him. However, Victor did not stop at all. Dang 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 dang. The figures of the two staggered rapidly, their hands shot out like lightning, and the daggers stabbed each other's vital organs like poisonous snakes. In just a few seconds, the daggers of the two collided dozens of times. Victor used both guns and knives, and after waving the dagger to hold Chen in place, the pistol held in the other hand fired instantly. Chen dodged as expected, but at this moment Victor's dagger stabbed at him again. The two fought dazzledly for a while, and Victor's pistol ran out of bullets. He suddenly backed away, and then activated the invisibility function of his combat uniform. A flash of lightning flashed, and he disappeared into the air in an instant. Chen narrowed his eyes, and he saw a completely transparent figure in front of him. In fact, if the other party is not moving, it will not be seen at all. Victor's stealth combat uniform is actually a kind of optical camouflage. Through the optical sensing components on the combat uniform, the light received by the front of the body is scanned, and then the same light is emitted from behind to simulate the same light, causing the light to directly penetrate the body. But if he is moving, the optical sensing components will be slightly out of sync, which will make people take a closer look at the slight distortion of the scenery ahead. Chen eyes followed the transparent figure in front of him, but Victor moved faster and faster, and gradually Chen couldn't catch his position anymore. With a sudden swish, a black sword light suddenly appeared from behind him. Chen, who was fully concentrated, reacted in an instant, turned his head abruptly, blocked the blow with a dang bang. At the moment when the two collided, Victor's figure flashed past, but he immediately activated the invisible mode and disappeared again. At this time, there was a bang explosion sound from the other side of the test hall, the door was blown open, and Yi ran in from there. Seeing Chen here, a happy smile appeared on Yi's indifferent face, and he ran over like a butterfly and plunged into Chen arms. Dad, I killed a lot of undead. Oh. Before Chen could speak, Yi's figure suddenly rose up, and he kicked back. Boom. Hey, Victor was kicked, and the optical camouflage stealth system also became disordered, its function was disconnected, and his figure reappeared. Chen Yuyan said behind Yi Yi, be careful, don't kill him. Oh. Yi replied simply. At this time, the disgusting giant mouth above the test hall suddenly squirmed violently, and then a huge object was squeezed out of the mouth, and then fell to the ground with a bang. Chen Yuyan only saw a huge four-barreled rocket launcher at first sight. This rocket launcher looks like the American M202 tube rocket launcher, but its size is several times larger. M202 is only a rocket with a caliber of 66 mm, but this giant rocket launcher has at least a caliber of 200 mm. It's also a humming four-pipe. And when this thing gradually unfolded, Chen Yuyan could see its original appearance clearly. This is a monster whose whole body is covered with alloy armor. I only saw that it was almost 4 meters high, and its left hand was extremely thick, at least 3 meters long, and the thickness actually reached 2/3 of the body. The huge four-barrel rocket launcher was mounted on the right shoulder of the thick alloy armor, and the monster's normal-sized right hand grasped the rocket launcher. Under the alloy armor, iron-blue mutated muscles are displayed, the hardness of which can even be compared to metal. The destructive armored tyrant organic combat system, TA.L.O.S tyrant. Known as the strongest super tyrant who can compete with the modern army, the complete form of B.O.W. The moment the Talos tyrant jumped down, Chen Yuyan took out a can of liquid tiberium and drank it directly. After that, he saw the rocket launcher on Talos tyrant's shoulder suddenly spew out a large plume of flame. Yi. Dodge. Without any hesitation, Chen Yuyan immediately increased his speed to the fastest and dashed forward for 2 steps. There were several experimental data collection equipment over there, and he planned to hide behind the equipment. Go. Boom. Before Chen Yuyan could hide in, a violent explosion was set off behind him, and the powerful shock wave directly sent Chen Yuyan flying. The high temperature scorched his body, and the shrapnel slashed one by one. Chen Yuyan felt as if he was hit by a truck, and flew out instantly and hit the wall of the test hall with a bang. But even so, his attention was still on the Talos tyrant. When he saw the bazooka on its shoulder spewing out the tail flame again, he raised the speed to the fastest again and flashed behind the data collection equipment. Boom! The rocket exploded not far in front of the equipment, but this data collection equipment actually withstood the powerful firepower and protected Chen Yuyan. After all, these equipment are usually used to test the combat data of the Talos tyrant. But the high temperature, shock waves, and strong vibrations coming through the equipment also made Chen Yuyan feel uncomfortable all over. He grabbed a piece of shrapnel inserted into his thigh and threw it aside. The wound immediately began to scab and heal, and even in some burnt places, the scorched skin began to fall off and new skin grew. This is the powerful recovery ability of his body after absorbing tiberium. He had just stood up, when suddenly there was a flash of the knife. Victor came over, and the black dagger in his hand stabbed Chen Yuyan fiercely in the chest. Chen Yuyan quickly blocked it, but Victor picked up the pistol in his other hand and shot. Bang! The pistol bullet hit Chen Yuyan's arm, and the next second, Victor was kicked flying out. Chen Yuyan was about to give chase, when he suddenly saw a huge shadow enveloping him, and he quickly rolled to the side. Boom click. Talos tyrant's huge arm, which was too big to look good, swept over and smashed the data collection device that Chen Yuyan avoided just now into 2 pieces. Fortunately, Chen Yuyan was able to dodge quickly, otherwise he would not have died and would have been seriously disabled by the slap. Chen Yuyan stood up quickly, only to find a petite figure standing on the shoulder of the Talos tyrant. It was Yi. Billowing flames burst out from her hand, and the alloy longsword slashed down with the trajectory of flames, instantly cutting the huge bazooka on Talos tyrant's body into 2 pieces. But in the next second, Victor also jumped on the Talos tyrant and fought with Yi. The flames in Yi's hands were flourishing, as if there was a fire dragon in his hands, and Victor was not to be outdone. He emitted billowing black mist, and this black mist seemed to be substantial, and it could actually resist the flames emitted by Yi. Two powerful energies, one red and one black, collided together, the flames overflowed, and the black air billowed. The Talos tyrant lost his restraint, and immediately rushed towards Qinyuan again. Qinyuan did not retreat but advanced, and rushed forward, and the huge arm of the Talos tyrant suddenly fell into the air. I only heard, boom. With a dull sound, Qinyuan punched Talos tyrant's chest. But the thick alloy armor blocked the blow, although a big crater was left on the armor, and there was a clear fist mark on it. Almost at the same time, the M41A1 pulse rifle appeared in front of Qinyuan. He fired continuously, and 100 rounds of 10mm caseless bullets shot out obliquely. They were all fired in less than 10 seconds, hitting the tower on the Ross tyrant. Sparks splashed from the thick alloy armor, and yellow-green liquid splashed everywhere on the mutated body. The Talos tyrant took a few steps back, picked up the huge damaged bazooka and swept it directly. At this time, the power of the tiberium mine in Qinyuan's body had swelled to the extreme, and he actually went up to meet it. One punch on the bazooka. The two huge forces collided, and the bazooka was twisted, shattered, and scattered on the ground. Taros tyrant only held a small trigger in his hand. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Qinyuan rushed over, leaped high and approached the Talos tyrant. Boom! 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 Several punches hit it in a row, leaving fist marks on its chest armor. After landing, he turned sideways to avoid Talos tyrant's huge arm, and hit its knee with a sweeping move named King Xiu. The Talos tyrant is tall and has long arms, and was obviously developed to deal with modern hot weapon warfare. There is no way to resist Qinyuan's close stalking. After the knee was hit continuously, its knee finally couldn't support it, and it fell to its knees suddenly. Victor, who was fighting fiercely with Yi on the other side, saw the Talos tyrant fall, and quickly feinted his knife, activated the optical camouflage to hide, and rushed towards Qinyuan. However, at this moment, Qinyuan suddenly punched the empty space next to him fiercely. Boom! Victor was hit in the chest by this punch, and immediately spewed out a big mouthful of blood. The whole person flew upside down and hit the wall with a bang. The huge impact made him spit out another mouthful of blood with pieces of flesh. Under Victor's unbelievable eyes, Qinyuan pouted, "Look at your shoes." Victor looked down, and sure enough, he found a faint mark of light on his shoe at some point, and he wiped it, but it couldn't be wiped off at all. Level 0 tricks, the imprint of the secret technique. Yi said lightly. You disappointed me in this battle, Victor. Even on the road of strength, you haven't been able to go too far. You seem to have forgotten the original intention of your hard training. Qinyuan said, taking out a grenade, pulled the ring and threw it directly at Victor. Boom! A violent explosion set off. At this time, there was a sudden movement from the Talos tyrant who was lying on the ground next to him. Qinyuan turned around and suddenly found that the monster was wriggling continuously. At the same time, in the control center of the Caucasus base, Wolman Schindler looked at the screen with a red warning sign flashing in front of him, and laughed strangely. "GGGG, the show has just begun. GGGG. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 457. 451 I am so angry. Seeing the TA.L.O.S tyrant's body wriggling violently on the ground, Qinyuan frowned, and immediately took out the injection gun, and fired 5 or 6 T-virus neutralizers over there. However, this dose of neutralizing agent would not have any effect on the Talos tyrant, so Qinyuan took out the M41A1 pulse rifle and fired at that side. A large number of 10mm caliber caseless bullets shot at the Talos tyrant's body, But at this moment, a sudden change occurred. All I saw was Talos Tyrant's back split open suddenly, and a spine-like bone suddenly protruded. This spine grew longer and bigger, piercing the giant mouth-like tissue on the ceiling like lightning. With a click, the sharp claws at the end of the spine grabbed the giant mouth, and even pulled out a large number of cables inside the giant mouth under the terrifying force. In this way, the vertebrae are connected to the ceiling through cables. The spine began to shrink, hanging Talos Tyrant in mid-air. At this time, the Talos Tyrant was constantly mutating, and his body was getting bigger and bigger. The spine was constantly absorbing energy from the giant mouth on the ceiling, stimulating the body to further mutate. There was a rattling sound, and the thick alloy armor was broken by the Talos Tyrant's rapidly growing body and fell to the ground. The Talos Tyrant now has become a giant monster that is 2 or 3 times bigger than before. The mutated Talos Tyrant now has no lower body, and the huge spine protruding from the back is connected to the ceiling and hangs it in midair. Its huge left hand has become even bigger now, with 4 claws more than 2 meters long spreading out in 4 directions. The sharp claws exude a metallic luster. This huge arm is at least 5 meters long. Judging from the mutated muscles and terrifying claws, there is no doubt that this thing can even scratch an armored vehicle. And the right arm, which was originally in normal size proportions, has become as huge as the left arm. These 2 huge arms alone occupy at least 2/3 of the mutant Talos Tyrant's volume. Tentacles like poisonous snakes protruded from the back of the Talos Tyrant. Chunyuan looked at those tentacles with their tips constantly opening and closing, with a light blue light in the middle, and suddenly had an ominous premonition in his heart. He suddenly dodged to the side. With a bang, a beam of light hit the ground where he was standing just now, burning the metal ground red. Roar! Talos Tyrant uttered a deafening roar, and his spine contracted violently, driving it to rush towards Chunyuan, and grabbed it fiercely with its extremely huge claws. The attack range of this claw is quite wide. The 4 2-meter-long claws grabbed it from different directions at the same time, covering a large space around it in an instant. There was no way for Chunyuan to dodge, so he had to pounce forward, and at the same time punched the Talos Tyrant's palm hard. But the power of the mutated Talos Tyrant was terrifying, coupled with the continuous energy supply of the spine. Chunyuan's punch that broke the stone had no effect, and it caught Chunyuan in one go. Huge force began to oppress Chunyuan's body. He grabbed a paw with one hand and resisted with all his strength. After absorbing the Tiberium mine, his power is also extremely powerful, and he can actually resist the grasp of the mutant Talos Tyrant. But at this moment, he was also close to the limit. The muscles in his arms swelled, blue veins emerged, and even some blood vessels began to shatter, oozing blood. At this time, the tentacles behind the tyrant also turned around, and the light at the tip began to flicker. Talos Tyrant raised his other hand to grab it, but at this moment, Yi suddenly rushed out, but she was holding the burst shotgun in her hand. She jumped high and grabbed Talos Tyrant's other hand, picked up the burst shotgun and fired at almost zero distance. Boom! 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 Continuous explosions exploded in Talos Tyrant's hand. It howled and wanted to throw Yi off, but Yi had already dropped the shotgun and stabbed it into its arm with its alloy longsword. Hanging on the longsword can't be shaken off at all. Chunyuan seized the opportunity to kick out suddenly, and broke free again and again. At this moment, 3 light blue beams swept across. It's the tentacles that emit light beams after charging. Chunyuan fell to the ground and panted violently. During the battle with the mutant Talos Tyrant, he was finally pushed beyond his limits. Even with the help of the Tiberium mine, he still couldn't suppress this terrifying monster. Seeing that Yi was still dealing with the mutant Talos Tyrant, Chunyuan gritted his teeth suddenly, and rushed over again regardless of his arm injury. While rushing, he drank another bottle of liquid Tiberium. His strength skyrocketed again, and the wounds on his body began to heal quickly. He took out the M4101 pulse rifle and fired a burst. However, under the volume of the mutant Talos Tyrant, the damage caused by the 10mm caliber caseless bullet is already very limited. Sensing that Chunyuan was rushing again, the tentacles on the mutant Talos Tyrant's back began to shake like poisonous snakes, emitting light blue rays of light towards Chunyuan. He predicted the direction of these tentacles, avoided the light beam, and then threw himself on the ground. Swish! Talos Tyrant's huge claws barely scratched his back. The largest attack gap for the Talos Tyrant suspended in the air by the spine is directly below it. Yi! Get out of the way! Chunyuan yelled violently, and then took out a huge firearm from his personal space MK-19 automatic grenade launcher. Yi and Chunyuan were connected, and immediately landed with a beautiful backflip. While still in the air, he swung the long sword in his hand, and a few flashes of sword light flashed, and the tentacles on Talos Tyrant's back were cut off. 4 sticks. Chunyuan took this opportunity to pull the trigger. Boom 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 boom. The 40mm caliber grenades were fired continuously, and exploded on Talos Tyrant. This is Chunyuan's gift specially prepared for the Talos Tyrant. The powerful firepower blew up Talos Tyrant with scars all over his body. It let out a howl of pain, its spine suddenly loosened, and the tyrant fell directly from midair, with 2 huge claws directly thrusting towards Chunyuan. At this moment, another person suddenly ran over outside the door, with 4 eyes. All I saw was an RPG-7 rocket launcher on her shoulder, aiming at Talos Tyrant's spine and blasting it out. Boom! The root of the tyrant's spine was suddenly hit by a rocket. At this time, the Talos Tyrant was in a stretched state to increase its length in order to attack Chunyuan. The dense mutated bones did not completely protect the internal cables and nerves. This burst of explosion unexpectedly it directly broke the spine. Chunyuan reacted very quickly, and dropped the MK-19 automatic howitzer and rolled to the side at the same time the Talos Tyrant jumped down. Before he could take the next move, the huge body of Talos Tyrant crashed down beside him, and the broken spine twisted feebly and slumped to the ground. There was no lower body in the first place, and now he lost the giant mouth-like device on the ceiling to provide it with energy. Now the Talos Tyrant can only struggle desperately on the ground. It uses its arms to support its body, but this way it has no means of attack at all, and the tentacles on the back can no longer emit light beams after losing their energy supply. The current Talos Tyrant has completely become a toothless tiger. When did you come here? Chunyuan asked 4 times. I entered the base from the other direction of Chris and the others. When I heard the sound of an explosion, I came here. 4 Eyes replied. It's a good thing you're here, otherwise this monster would really be impossible to deal with. Chunyuan gasped. I've never heard that Umbrella has such a mature tyrant product. 4 Eyes looked at Talos Tyrant with great interest, wishing to take it and slice it for research. You can think that the Caucasus base is the real trump card of Umbrella. They conduct biochemical experiments all over the world, and then the experimental results are collected at the Caucasus base and converted into mass production. If it wasn't for the incident in Raccoon City, Umbrella, if their conspiracy is made public, they may be able to form a climate within a few years and organize a terrifying B.O.W army. Chunyuan said. He walked over to the Talos Tyrant and picked up the MK-19 howitzer from the ground. The tyrant wanted to attack him and raised a paw, but his body immediately lost his balance and fell to the ground, only howling on the ground. Chunyuan reloaded the howitzer, yanked the bolt, and then aimed at the Talos Tyrant's face and pulled the trigger. Boom boom boom. Massive explosions exploded on the tyrant, and its howl grew louder, then smaller, and then faded away. This Umbrella Company's highest masterpiece was blasted into a pile of rotten meat like this. Note 1. Chunyuan vented all his previous resentment on the Talos Tyrant, and fired hundreds of grenades before stopping. He breathed a sigh of relief, and said to Xian and Yi, let's go, let's act together. After killing the Talos tyrant, the experimenter behind him must be full of thoughts on how to eliminate me, so that Chris and the others will have something to take advantage of. Chance. He looked in the other direction, and over there, Victor had disappeared. In fact, Chunyuan just threw a grenade in the past, just to create a chance for him to avoid the monitoring and escape. It seems that Victor is also very good, and he ran away immediately. Based on his long-term experience as an informant, it can be seen immediately that Victor has not betrayed at all. He is really just looking for power, although Chunyuan does not agree with this method. Four Eyes pointed to the door and said, "I just found a factory that produces Hunter Alpha, and then cracked and took over the factory's inventory. Now we have a batch of hunters that can be used." Chunyuan looked over, and sure enough, he found that dozens of hunters were fighting the zombies, various B.O.Ws, and undead at the door of the laboratory. He asked a little strangely, "There should be an artificial intelligence here, right? Why didn't you stop it?" I also want to know this question, but the fact is like this. Four Eyes doesn't care about this matter, and in her opinion, it is good to be able to achieve the goal. Chunyuan touched his chin, and a smile suddenly appeared on the corner of his mouth. He turned his head to look at the monitor on the ceiling, raised the MK-19 and blasted the camera to pieces. He actually killed the Talos tyrant. On the console side, Wolman Schindler suddenly stood up and said loudly. He seemed a little hysterical now, and his previous calmness completely disappeared. "No. No, 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 no." Wolman tightly grasped the staff of civilization, circling around the control center nervously. Why are these two experimenters so powerful? Even the Talos tyrant is no match. Victor also can't beat them. He is the most complete transformation of the Black Warrior. No, 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 no. I want to kill him. I want to kill him. It's better to reach an agreement with that old man Spencer in the past. As long as the White Queen under his control can help us, the thousands of B.O.Ws stored in the Caucasus base will immediately act with purpose and wipe out all the invaders. Nikola Genovaev said slowly behind Wolman. No. Wolman said loudly in a sharp voice, "That old man. That old man is about to be completely controlled by me. Then, whether it's Beihao or Umbrella Company, they are all in my pocket. Just let that old man huddle in the cold laboratory to die." Wallman thought about it again. "Okay then, let the Death Knights deal with them." Nikolai frowned and said, "But Albert Wesker, who was used to transform into a Death Knight, hasn't completed the ceremony yet." "No need. As long as you can control a country. There are as many undead creatures as you want. Although it would be a pity to interrupt Wesker's transformation ceremony, if you can kill Chunyuan and the others, it will definitely be worth it," Wolman said gloomily. A mocking smile appeared on the corner of Nikolai's mouth, but Wolman didn't notice it. He took 2 steps back and bowed his head in silence. Wolman Schindler didn't notice Nikolai's expression. He turned and walked out of the control center, and came to the laboratory next to him. There is a large glass culture tank erected here. The tank body and the ground of the culture tank are covered with bright red magic circles, which are full of blood. At this time, the magic circle was shining with scarlet light, and streams of black energy were injected into the cultivation tank and entered Albert Wesker's body, making the undead energy in his body stronger and stronger. Wolman Schindler looked up at Albert Wesker, whose body had grown in size and was 2 meters long, with a complicated look on his face. "The ceremony cannot be completed, it's all your fault. Chunyuan. You cost me a precious Death Knight." Note 1, in the Umbrella Chronicles where the TA.L.O.S tyrant appeared, because it is only a light gun shooting game, it has great limitations. Its performance can be said to be a shame, and it can even be eliminated with an assault rifle. So here, Xiaojing has strengthened it rationally, otherwise, it would be a waste at all based on the performance in the game. Thank you for the 1000 starting coins rewarded by the Saint of Sleep and Yimenkingshan. Thank you for the 100 starting coins rewarded by Tu Longaoshan. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 458. 452 Anti-Kill. Wolman Schindler walked to the cultivation tank where Albert Wesker was, and he began to shake his civilization staff, and circles of black mist permeated the air through the civilization staff. Okay, wake up. Death Knight Wesker. Wolman began to chant the spell, only to see the countless mysterious magic circles on the culture tank, and the ground seemed to come alive suddenly, and the blood on them began to the flowing. Scarlet light was much brighter than before. However, at this moment, a gloomy voice suddenly sounded behind him. I have been observing for a long time, in fact, your own strength is not very good, right? Hearing this familiar voice, Wolman trembled all over. He turned his head suddenly, but at this moment, he only heard a puff, and an arm pierced directly from his back and protruded from his chest. It was Nikolai Genovaev who did it? No. You, how could you break free from my control? Wolman said with great difficulty. Countless blood spurted from his chest and mouth, and he couldn't even speak fluently. Ever since you gave me the curse that can control people's hearts, I have been exploring how this curse works. In fact, this curse is nothing more than a kind of mental brainwashing device, which repeats some sounds directly to people's brains, to achieve the purpose of brainwashing. The speaker slowly appeared from behind Nikolai. Oswell E. Spencer. You are not under my control. With a snap, Wolman's crow skull mask fell to the ground, revealing a skinny and ugly face, and he appeared to be over 50 years old. Of course not, otherwise, how could I still keep the White Queen's control? You don't really think that the current artificial intelligence technology can let the White Queen distinguish which of my actions are under control? That's just I made it up to lie to you, idiot. With a plop, Wolman fell to his knees, pointing at Spencer tremblingly with his blood-stained hand. You, wow. Before he finished speaking, he spurted out a mouthful of blood. Spencer said with a sinister smile, actually, I found that your so-called magical power still has to follow the basic rules in the end. It's not so mysterious, it's just another form of energy utilization. So, your so-called mind control is similar to the effect of me locking people in a small black room and playing brainwashing videos repeatedly. The difference is that your magic can project sound directly into the brain in a certain way, and we need a projector. And even if you transform into an undead creature, your control can only affect people with weak minds, and such people obviously don't include me. A smirk appeared on the corner of Nikolai's mouth. Finally, thank you for giving my power, I love it. I have seen quite a few of you travelers from other worlds. Most of you know some things that will happen in the future, and you know each of us well. And it seems that you all think that with this you can is this world playing with applause. Ha 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 ha. Spencer smiled for a while, then said with restraint, I don't know, waste is waste everywhere, it's not something that can be changed by time travel. Spencer continued, but one thing to say, this kind of magic of yours is indeed very dangerous, so let's just use it for ourselves. If it spreads indefinitely, it will be difficult for even me to control the situation. At this time Wolman Schindler could no longer support himself. He fell to the ground, but he was still muttering, do you think, the Wailing Banshee, the high-level troops such as the Dark Warrior, the Death Knight, and the Dark Sky such a magical building, is it possible for a low-level mage like me to have it? He. That's why I can't let you live. Spencer replied lightly, I have basically understood the operation mode of your magic, and you are no longer useful. Do you think the power of magic is so simple? Stupid, 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 GGG, GGG. Wolman Schindler let out a burst of the last strange thing in his life laughing. He turned over with his last strength and lay facing the ceiling. At this time, Spencer and Nikolai saw that under him, at some point, Wolman had drawn a magic circle with his bloody fingers. All I saw was that the magic circle was running at high speed, and it actually began to crazily absorb the blood from Wolman's whole body. A large amount of blood spurted out, flowing along the magic circle directly to the cultivation tank containing Wesker. "Stop him!" Spencer yelled. Nikolai reacted quickly, and immediately drew out his pistol and shot at Wolman's body with bang bang bang. However, every time a bullet hit Wolman, a large amount of black mist would diffuse from the bullet hole. These black mist are getting more and more, even enveloping the whole cultivation tank. Gggg, gggg, a burst of strange laughter came from mid-air, only to see a light green phantom exactly like Wolman emerging from his body, and he let out a burst of laughter. Ethereal and strange laughter, the laughter seemed to come from all directions. We necromancers are familiar with such things as resurrecting the soul from a dead body. Gggg, Wolman's soul laughed strangely, and then the black mist rose, and Wolman's soul was wrapped in countless black mist towards Wesker. Go straight. His soul no longer has a body, and it directly penetrated the sealed culture tank and came to Wesker. Sudden. A dark hand stretched out suddenly, grabbing Wolman's soul. The frightening thing is that even though his soul is incorporeal, it is still firmly grasped by this hand. Wolman suddenly felt something was wrong, he struggled violently, screamed, and cursed, but it didn't help. In the cultivation tank, Albert Wesker, who was motionless like a sculpture before, has opened his eyes. Those terrifying eyes stared at Wolman, full of bloodthirsty and cruelty. "Wesker. Aren't you already dead?" Spencer was also shocked. Without saying a word, he controlled the mechanical wheelchair and turned around and ran. Nikolai followed closely behind and fled in a hurry. "Dead? Yes, I am indeed dead. Otherwise, how could I have gained such a powerful force?" "Ha ha ha ha," Wesker sneered, then put Wolman's soul on his lips, lightly suck it in with just one inhalation. Thanks to the cat passing by for another reward of 1,000 starting coins. All Heaven's Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 459. 453 Final Mission. Inside the ventilation ducts in the hallway, Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine watched the horrific scene below as they watched Wolman Schindler's spirit being directly murdered by Albert. When Wesker ate it, Jill couldn't hide the fear in her heart. She couldn't help covering her mouth and trembling a little. Spencer and Nikolai, who were below, saw that Wesker had woken up, and hurried away. With a sneer on the corner of Wesker's mouth, he punched out. Boom. Click. The reinforced glass of the cultivation tank, which can withstand heavy machine gun bullets, was smashed into pieces by his punch. Wesker stepped out, looked at Spencer's back and said, "Why are you running?" "Mr. Spencer. I really want to catch up with you." As soon as the words fell, his figure suddenly disappeared from the spot, appearing 10 meters away at almost the same speed as teleportation. Almost at the same time, harsh sirens suddenly sounded in the entire Caucasus experimental base. Only at this time did the base really enter a combat state. "Bayhow. Help me block Wesker. Then monitor Chinhuyan's position and lead him to Wesker's side," Spencer said loudly. The gates of some nearby B.O.W factories opened, and one by one B.O.W came off the production line and rushed towards Wesker. The entire base suddenly fell into chaos. The B.O.W controlled by the White Queen and the zombies produced by the undead magic and the T-virus couldn't urinate together at all. The undead who lost Wolman's control went crazy, and the entire experimental base was full of zombies wrestling with BOW group figure. The iron door next to it opened, and more than 20 Predator Alpha rushed out from the snow storage area, waving their sharp claws and pounced on Wesker. However, Wesker's figure suddenly flashed, and only a figure covered in black smoke was seen shaking around, and even a vague afterimage could be seen. In less than 2 seconds, Wesker's figure reappeared, and there was only a puff 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 sound, and the more than 20 Hunter Alpha spewed out a large amount of yellow-green blood almost simultaneously, and then fell to the ground. But this is just the beginning. The noise here attracted the surrounding undead zombies, and they also rushed over in groups of Super Wesker. Wesker looked at Spencer and Nikolai, who had already run away, and just snorted coldly. Then he raised his head and looked directly at the ventilation duct where Chris and Jill were hiding. He sneered, his majestic voice was full of chill and cruelty. Miscellaneous fish. Swish. With a wave of his hand, a jet-black sword light appeared out of nowhere, splitting the ventilation duct in two with a click. Bang. Chris rolled down from the ventilation duct with Jill in his arms. If he hadn't reacted quickly just now, Wesker would have killed him this time. However, even so, Jill was also injured by the blade from her chest to her shoulders. Fortunately, the power of Wesker's air slash has been weakened a lot, otherwise she would have disappeared. This is not an enemy we can deal with. Run. Chris actually said this to himself, because Jill had lost the ability to move. He immediately threw 2 grenades, picked Jill up and ran away. Boom. Boom. The grenade exploded, but Chris heard a faint voice beside him. Where are you throwing your grenade? Wesker. Chris exclaimed, and was immediately sent flying by Wesker's blow the next second. Boom. Chris slammed into the wall, and Jill was thrown on the other side. Well, Chris, I said it long ago, you are just repeating your failed life over and over again. Wesker didn't move, he stared at Chris, mocking said. Chris struggled to get up from the ground and coughed up a big mouthful of blood. He stared at Wesker bitterly. Albert Wesker. You betrayed S.T.A.R.S and everyone. He, natural selection, survival of the fittest. I have never been loyal to anyone, and naturally I have never betrayed anyone. Only those who are worthy of survival can lead to the new world under my leadership. In this process, some are just victims. Wesker sneered, and you, Chris, are one of the poor victims. Chris gritted his teeth, clenched the M92F pistol in his hand, and stared at Wesker with hatred. At this moment, a very soft voice suddenly came from his communicator. You only have one chance, follow my command. The experimenter of the Bronze Group, Woolman Schindler, has died, and the place of death is the Umbrella Caucasus experimental base. The death of the experimenter has nothing to do with you, so there is no reward. Currently, Chen Yuyan is the only experimenter left in the world of Resident Evil. After completing the exclusive task, the experimenter will monopolize this world. Exclusive mission, kill Oswell Edward Spencer. Task reward, achieve the conditions to monopolize the world of Resident Evil. Additional task, kill Nikolai Genovaev. Task reward, Subsidiary Manufacturing Station X1. This subsidiary manufacturing station can only be built in the world of Resident Evil, and the buildings and units built through this manufacturing station in the world of Resident Evil do not need to spend additional points. Additional task, kill all Black Warriors. Task reward, Lucky Draw Chance ×1. Final mission, kill Albert Wesker. Task reward, resurrect one of your dead daughters, choose randomly from the 3rd to the 12th. Hint, Albert Wesker and Oswell Edward Spencer will also be prompted. If they kill you, they will replace you as the experimenter who monopolizes this world. A series of system prompts appeared in Chen Yuyan's mind. He who was looking for the way was stunned for a moment, and then said mockingly, that necromancer is dead. He. Dead. How do you know? Four Eyes turned back and asked. It is also a person who can travel through time and space. I will know when he dies. But, our problem may have just begun. Chen Yuyan simply used a more suitable excuse and said, once the necromancer dies, the undead will surely break free and go mad. And, Wesker is still here. There is one thing he didn't say, that is, Albert Wesker has become the ultimate boss of this world. If you look at Victor's previous strength by leaps and bounds, then Wesker's current strength is simply unimaginable. At this time, the sirens sounded loudly in the Caucasus base, and the red lights were turned on immediately, and the surrounding B.O.Ws began to come out from all over, fighting with those zombies. Hunter Alpha, Plant Number 42, Chimera, Zombie Dog, Webweaver, and even some Tyrant T-002. All kinds of B.O.W rushed out of the warehouse. Many B.O.Ws also rushed towards Chinuyan, Yi, and Four Eyes rushed up, one left and one right, and blocked the B.O.W with full firepower. At this time Chinuyan opened the communication and said, "Chris. Beltway. Ghost. Report the situation on your side separately. Thank you for the 1000 starting coins rewarded by Star Sea Rangers. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 460. 454 Black Samurai Squad. Georgian border town, Kazbek, early morning. Da-da-da. Da-da-da. Gunshots continued, adding a tinge of heat to the cold morning air. There are even light blue laser beams flashing through the air, leaving a terrible burn on the target with destructive heat. On the streets of the town, an army of 400 synths marched in 10 divisions from different directions, cleaning up every undead they saw. Although in the previous battles, Arabi's troops and Grashvili's tank company wiped out a large number of undead, there are still thousands of undead entrenched in Kazbek city. Especially in the direction of the train station, where there are still a large number of undead carrying weapons and equipment, this line needs to be cut off completely, otherwise, when undead spirits from other places rush over, they will immediately arm themselves and become an army of equipment, an army of undead with long-range firepower. Synthetic soldiers marched forward. Although their flexibility was not as good as that of ordinary people, they were not much worse. They lined up on the street, firing continuously as they advanced. The dense light blue laser beams were continuously emitted, and the instant light illuminated some dark corners. In those corners, there were many zombies in suspended animation. A large group of zombies slammed through a fence and rushed over in a state of disarray. They held guns like AK-47 in their hands and instinctively pulled the trigger. Da-da-da, da-da-da. A large number of bullets poured out, hitting the armor installed on the synthetic soldier with a clang. There were also some bullets that pierced through the armor or shot in through the gaps in the armor. The powerful kinetic energy of the bullets immediately destroyed the electronic components of the synthetic man, and a burst of electric sparks erupted, and the synthetic man fell to the ground immediately. The light blue laser beam continuously irradiated the zombie's body, and it could be seen that every time it was irradiated, in addition to burning the zombie's body with scorched marks that were deep enough to see the bone, there was also a trace of black air wafting from it. Energy attacks can indeed have an effect on magical powers, whether it is ghosts without entities or undead magic that controls zombies. But don't think that laser guns are a sharp weapon against undead. Maybe it is true for ghosts without corpses, but for rough-skinned zombies and ghouls, laser beams have no stopping effect, and these undead it is not easy to be killed, so it is easy to be rushed to the front by the undead. Laser gun. This is really a laser gun. So amazing. Behind the synthetic human troops, the Georgian soldiers led by Arabis are providing fire support. To put it bluntly, they use synthetic humans as human shields to protect against cold guns. This matter is much better than letting them directly charge into battle, so they are still interested in commenting on the synthetic human army. And seeing these robots, apart from admiration, the soldiers also had some doubts in their hearts, because if one day, when they need to face such an army of robots, what will happen? Snapped. A synthetic human was hit on the head by a bullet fired by a zombie, and the helmet was instantly penetrated, and the sensors and chips on the head were instantly destroyed. The synthetic human immediately fell to the ground and did not move. But the synths behind didn't stop. They stepped on the wreckage of the fallen synths and continued to move forward, and the laser guns in their hands kept firing. Psi-intensive laser beams irradiate the zombies. 2 of the zombies were irradiated by the laser too much, their body temperature immediately rose to the burning point of the muscles, and the 2 zombies burned immediately, and a burnt smell permeated the air. However, more zombies rushed over, and they quickly broke through the line of defense with laser gun shots, and got close to the synthetic man. I only saw that these synths are at a disadvantage in the face of zombies that are much stronger than ordinary people. They are even stronger than zombies. Coupled with the alloy bone structure and thick armor, they can only fight against those who can only rely on claws and mouths. Biting and virus-infected zombies are completely hanging. The Georgian soldiers in the rear also reacted, and they hurriedly stepped forward to shoot at the rushing zombies. The shooting of live ammunition weapons immediately made those zombies retreat steadily. Even if they couldn't kill them, they could knock them back and knock them down so that they couldn't get close. Arabiz looked at the army of synthetic humans in front of him and kept wiping cold sweat. He whispered to Lin Huo, "Your Excellency advisor, these robots." Synthetic. Lin Huo interrupted him to correct. "Ah, yes, synthetic man, synthetic man. Look, should I report the matter of the synthetic man truthfully, or should I pretend that I never saw it?" Arabiz asked for instructions. In fact, during this battle, there appeared a robot army that could use weapons and had a fairly intelligent robot. He should report such a thing, but what he was more worried about now was that Lin Huo turned his face when he was upset. In this way, facing the pursuit of hundreds of synths, he didn't think he had the ability to escape. "Report as you want, just to help our group advertise." Lin Huo waved his hand to let Arabiz leave. He didn't care about this issue at all. The undead spirits kept attacking the synthetic man's defense line. However, the synthetic man was completely different from ordinary people. They didn't react at all to those hideous zombies, they just aimed, and shot mechanically. Moreover, the T-virus carried by the zombies has no effect on synthetic humans at all. Even if these zombies can use firearms, they are mechanically clumsy and can't aim. Of course, the premise is that someone can stand in this hail of bullets without changing his face, and then keep aiming and shooting. The undead's attack was instantly smashed to pieces like a wave hitting a rock. After a night of fierce fighting, the synths and Georgian soldiers finally surrounded Kazbek's railway station. Inside the train station, a large number of undead spirits gathered as expected, and a large number of weapons were also stored here, with very dense firepower. Arabiz simply called his artillery company over, and then used all the heavy firepower available to continuously bombard the railway station. Seeing that the overall situation was settled, Lin Huo walked over to Arabiz and asked, "I just asked you to ask, what is the situation of the Naneo X ladder now? Why is the Georgian government still unwilling to reinforce your side? Could it be that they're started?" Arabiz said in a low voice, "To tell you the truth, the fight almost started. Naneosti doesn't know what's wrong in his mind, but he actually wants to plot independence. Our government got the information and immediately sent the main force to the border area is ready to attack at any time. But I heard a military officer say that their biggest concern is Russia, and now there is a mixture of undead virus and T-virus. What's Russia's attitude?" Lin Huo continued to ask with a frown. "Russia means that as long as we dare to intervene in South Austria, they will directly intervene in us. But everyone knows the current situation in Russia. They don't allow a large-scale war at all. But no one dares to go bet on whether Russia will really come head-on," Arabiz said. "So, the current situation is a stalemate?" Lin Huo thought about it, and he was right. Under such a stalemate, Nanao Xli would ask for help from a third party, that is, the Caucasus base where the necromancer is located. Bar. At this time, his body suddenly shook, and the system prompting that the experimenter Wollman Schindler was dead appeared in his mind. There was a mocking smile on the corner of his mouth. He, it turns out that he is another idiot who thinks that he can manipulate those so-called NPCs by knowing the plot, but these worlds are so real, the so-called NPCs are no different from ordinary people, or in other words, none of the NPCs who call the shots in the plot are easy to mess with. He turned his head and looked ahead. Explosions were constantly setting off inside the train station. 6 122mm caliber howitzers bombarded the station continuously, and the undead inside were killed in pieces during the explosions. Inside the Caucasus experimental base. Boom! A violent explosion blew up a production line for the production of Predator Alpha, and Beltway, wearing AT-60 power armor, walked out of the smoke that hadn't dissipated. Ha 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 ha. That's great, ha 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 ha. He shook the dust off his body, picked up the communicator and said, "No problem, Boss Yan. I'm having a good time here. Ha 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 ha." However, before he finished speaking, a jet black knife light flashed past. Beltway only had time to lean back, and with a swish, the saber light fell on the power armor immediately, but it didn't pierce the protection of the power armor. Beltway looked intently, only to see an undead with a livid complexion and a black sword in his hand, walking out swayingly. The big knife in its hand has a handle inlaid with skulls, which looks ghostly. What is somewhat contrary is that it is still wearing a modern combat uniform with the FBC logo on it. That's not counting, 3 more undead like this walked over from the corner. However, Chen Yuyan didn't know this. He heard that Beltway was very happy now, so he started calling the other side. "Chris. How is your situation?" Beep. There was no reply on the other side of the communication except for noise and noise. Chen Yuyan frowned, and connected to Ghost's communication again. "Ghost, is there any change outside the base?" "Except for the explosions that come from time to time, there is nothing unusual." The voice of the ghost came. Chris lost contact. On the premise of ensuring the safety of Claire and Rebecca, look outside the base to see if there are any clues about them. Chen Yuyan said. The ghost said lightly, "Claire and Rebecca have found out that Chris has lost contact, and they entered the base regardless of dissuasion. So I'd better enter the base too, and find out where Chris is by the way." "Well, be careful." Chen Yuyan cut off the communication and continued on. Opening an iron gate, Chen Yuyan came to a passage, which was the passage on the 3rd floor of the factory building, but when he looked down, he saw a scene that surprised him so much. I only saw more than a dozen zombies in modern combat uniforms fighting among another group of zombies in researcher uniforms. Each of those zombies wearing combat uniforms holds a black, scary weapon with a skeleton forward, including a warhammer, a broadsword, a long sword and a long gun, and these weapons are like a big killer in their hands. A zombie wearing a combat uniform swung a long sword and slashed across, cutting the 3 zombies in two. Not only that, a large amount of black mist suddenly appeared from the severed wounds of these severed zombies, and these weapons were directly absorbed by the weapons in their hands. "It's a black warrior. Be careful. They seem to be transformed from H.C.F's mercenaries." Chen Yuyan frowned. The physical fitness of the mercenaries is far superior to that of ordinary people, so they just happen to be the material for that necromancer. If that's the case, there are at least hundreds of such black warriors. Four Eyes said lightly. Chen Yuyan frowned. He also felt the pressure. Asking him to kill all the black warriors in the mission seems to be definitely not an easy task. With the strength shown by these black warriors, if they appeared in groups, it would be a deadly threat even to him. In fact, when he fought the mutated Talos tyrant just now, Chen Yuyan discovered his own shortcoming. Although his physical fitness is against the sky, and his ability to absorb tiberium mines makes him even more powerful, but he has one of the most important shortcomings: he has supernatural power, but no supernatural fighting skills. Although his fighting skills are very superb, they are after all the fighting skills of ordinary people. Most of them are fighting methods such as locking throats and breaking joints. But now as his strength increases, the opponents he faces are completely different. Just like just now, you try to choke the Talos tyrant? Even speaking, what if the opponent is not a humanoid at all? Where are you playing joint skills? Therefore, if this problem cannot be solved, he is still a special soldier with relatively strong strength. While Chen Yuyan was thinking, the battle below had already begun to tell the winner. As the killing progressed, some black warriors who killed more zombies began to change. The black air covering their bodies became thicker and thicker, and the last bones came out of their bodies, and then closed together on the surface of their bodies. Formed a bone armor. These black warriors with bone armor are even more violent and powerful. They rushed into the crowd of zombies 10 times as large as here, as if they were in no one's land. And at this moment, some B.O.Ws also joined the battlefield, and these black warriors rushed forward without hesitation, and those hunters alpha were even killed by chopping melons and vegetables with one knife. Boom! 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 Accompanied by the sound of heavy footsteps, 2 burly tyrants with a height of about 3 meters, their hearts exposed, and mutated bone claws whose left arms were more than 1 meter long also walked over. It is the T-002 experimental tyrant. After entering the battlefield, these B.O.Ws began to attack all the undead zombies around them indiscriminately, and those zombies were quickly slaughtered. Seeing a new enemy approaching, the dozen or so black warriors immediately turned around and rushed towards B.O.W. All Heaven's Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 461. 455, a melee. The black warrior charged straight at the T-002 tyrant, and the weapon with the black mist in his hand collided with the tyrant's 1 meter long claws, making bursts of bursting sounds. Especially the black warrior whose bone armor began to appear on his body was extremely powerful, even comparable to the tyrant. What's more, these black warriors far surpassed the tyrant in terms of skill and flexibility. After the 2 tyrants slapped 2 or 3 black warriors away, they were immediately surrounded and their legs were cut off, and they could only be slaughtered. If there are more than 100 such black warriors, we will all be consumed by them. Said with 4 eyes looking forward. Chen Yuyan thought for a while, then suddenly laughed, but I think we still have a way. Don't these black warriors use knives, swords, or something? Yes, then what? 4 eyes asked back. Calculate the time, it should be ready soon. After he finished speaking, he suddenly raised his hand and took out 2 behemoths from his personal space, and then a light blue light curtain lit up beside him, and another robot with a different shape appeared on the ground out of thin air. Chen Yuyan pointed to the 2 power armors next to him, and his tone seemed a little joking. Multi-layer composite armor can resist 2.5 kilojoules of impact on the front, and there is a 10-micron silver ablation layer on the surface, which can effectively reflect energy weapons. Shooting and heat insulation. The power source adopts X-28 micronuclear fusion core, which can generate 60,000 watts of power, which is equivalent to 81 horsepower. With this thing, those black warriors can't break through the armor in a short time, and we can enjoy it provide fire output. He read it directly from the production list of the Infinite Base, and patted the body of the power armor as he spoke, making a crackling sound, showing its thick armor. T-51B power armor, you deserve it. Then this one, Chen Yuyan said, pointing to the robot next to him. The cyber-level assembly robot is modified with the structure of the Raider robot, equipped with short-range laser weapons and high-voltage electric batons, and is specially developed for close combat. Mechanical produced by masters, quality is guaranteed. The Four Eyes frowned. In fact, Chunyuan had asked her about this before, but Beltway was particularly enthusiastic about power armor. No matter how good the power is, it is still not flexible enough, right? Especially our opponent is this kind of black warrior with extremely high combat skills. What we have to do is to output firepower, and then this kind of cyber-level assembly robot and Yi will support us around, so that we will not be entangled by the black warrior. I have already vacated the third-level production line just now. Is continuously producing this kind of cyber-level assembly robot, and will soon be able to form a large scale. But Four Eyes asked back, since it can quickly form a scale, why didn't you just use it? Because this thing consumes points and it takes 60 minutes to make one, Chunyuan wiped off a cold sweat. He has developed some robot technology of these mechanical masters, but there is no related production line in the world of Resident Evil, can only be produced through a manufacturing center. So you plan to scale up next month, right? Four Eyes sarcastically said. Chunyuan coughed twice, and pushed her to AT-51B power armor regardless of whether the Four Eyes understood. This is the only way to do it now, there should be no large-scale zombie groups in the base now. We just happen to deal with these black warriors in the power armor. Chunyuan gave Chunyuan a blank look, but he still entered the power armor, and quickly learned to operate it under his guidance. This is actually not difficult, because most of the movements are completed through the muscle microsensing system. Chunyuan gave her another laser gatling. Although he wanted to use the final judgment, this exclusive weapon of Elder Maxon needed a level 4 manufacturing center to manufacture. Chunyuan also got into the power armor, and ordered, Yi, you cover by the side and drive away those black warriors who are approaching. Leave the rest to us. After speaking, he also gave instructions to the cyber-level assembly robot, and the robot immediately moved, jumped over the railing very nimbly, and jumped down from the upstairs with a bang. This burst of noise also attracted the black warriors over there. They turned their heads immediately, bloodthirsty light appeared in their scarlet eyes, and then rushed straight towards the robot at an extremely fast speed. Immediately, two black warriors rushed up, and the cyber-level assembly robot was no less flexible than them, and even stronger. When the high-voltage electric baton hit the black warrior, a large amount of black smoke dissipated immediately. Chunyuan and Xian immediately picked up the laser gatling and fired at the group of black warriors. Countless laser beams kept shooting at the black warriors, leaving behind scorched black marks. Under this burst of shooting, a black warrior walked a few steps forward and his body was ignited. Black smoke continued to rise from his body, and he quickly fell to the ground and remained motionless. The other black warriors immediately dispersed and charged from several directions at the same time, but the two power armors were on the balcony on the third floor, and they couldn't climb up for a while. Yi and the cyber-level assembly robot have also been interfering with this team of black warriors below, allowing Chunyuan and the others to shoot as much as they want. Those black warriors with bone armor on their bodies are stronger and faster than ordinary black warriors. After carrying out a few laser beams, they slashed down with the longsword exuding black air in their hands, and immediately assembled the cyber level. One of the robot's arms was severed. But almost at the same moment, Yi lightly pointed to the ground, and said in his mouth, "Anti-death barrier." A light yellow magic circle instantly appeared at the feet of the black warriors, and the undead magic on them was quickly melted away. Although it was not fatal, it also greatly affected their movements. With a flash of the knife, Yi had already cut off the head of one of the black warriors, and the cyber-level assembly robot also used its intact arm to stab into the helmet of another black warrior, and the electric current emitted by the high-voltage electric baton immediately scorched the whole head of Darth Vader. At this time, there was a sudden bang, another factory building in front of it exploded violently, and then a huge figure ran out, but it was AT-60 power armor. However, both feet of this power armor were burnt black, and on the shoulder of the armor, there was an iron blue severed arm hanging from it. Beltway's voice also came from the communication, "Damn. It's really too dangerous. These black zombies are so frightening. I threw an incendiary grenade at my feet to kill them. Did you blow yourself up with me?" Chunyuan laughed dumbfounded. "Don't tell me, this power armor is really powerful. I just feel a little hot when I step on the flames," Beltway said. Chunyuan nodded and said, "Chris and Jill lost contact. I don't know what happened, but it's definitely not a good thing. The necromancer is dead, and now the undead here are running rampant, fighting with BOW. We need to find the way to the control center as soon as possible, but the terrain here is too complicated. Now there is no need to make a fuss, we gather together and walk." With the addition of Beltway, they have a total of 3 power armors. Now there is a melee between the undead and BOW in the base, so they don't need to worry about poking a hornet's nest. They can directly block and kill gods and Buddhas. There was rampage in the base. In this melee, the zombies on the undead side basically made up the numbers, and the ghosts did not pose much threat to the BOW. Basically, they were killed by BOWs like Hunter Alpha in pieces. However, there are black warriors on the side of the undead, and these high-level undead creatures are not something ordinary BOW can contend with. Hunter Alpha is just a few knives for them. As a result, the two sides actually fought to a tie, which also made the situation even more chaotic. On the other side of the base, Nikolai Genoviev escorted Oswell E. Spencer to flee in a hurry, and there were also a large number of BOWs protecting them. In this group of BOWs, there are Hunter Alpha, Tyrants T-001 and T-002, and 2 Evon-type Tyrants, and even a group of Hellhounds around them. But such a strong lineup did not bring them the slightest sense of security. On the contrary, they just ran away desperately without looking back. Following them was a man covered in black mist, naked to the waist, with terrifying muscles like steel. It was Albert Wesker. There was a real red light in his scarlet eyes, and he just stared at Spencer with a faint smile on his lips. Nothing could stop his footsteps. The black mist in his hand condensed into a long sword, and with a sudden swing, a Hunter Alpha was cut in two. Even Tyrant T-001 couldn't stop it. Wesker only took 2 seconds to solve the battle. He grabbed the exposed heart of Tyrant T-001 and crushed it directly. After transforming into a Death Knight, Wesker's size has also grown a lot. He is already 2 meters tall, and he will not be at a disadvantage against the Tyrant even in terms of size. The White Queen. "Close gate number 3. Spencer said angrily. "Understood, immediately close the number 3 isolation gate." An electronically synthesized female voice came from the wheelchair's loudspeaker. All I saw was behind Spencer, a heavy metal door crashed down, separating Spencer and Wesker. Wesker threw away the Tyrant's body casually, smiled, and the black mist in his hands suddenly rose, condensing into 2 long swords and slashing directly towards the thick metal door. 1 knife. 2 knives. The slashed place on the metal door was soon stained with a layer of black, and the metal there seemed to be in a state of metal fatigue, and a big hole was directly kicked out by Wesker's kick. However, Spencer has taken the opportunity to escape at this time. Looking at the complicated passage ahead, Wesker sneered, "Miscellaneous fish." Then he raised his head and said to a camera, "Queen Bee, do you think you can still hold this place? Can you still save Spencer's life?" "No, you can't do anything. The last legacy of the Umbrella Corporation, it belongs to me after all, he. But now, it's better to do some warm-up exercises first. Chunyuan, I don't know why the voice that appeared in my head asked me to kill you, but I'm happy anyway." Wesker said to himself. "You said." He looked around, turned around, and walked towards the place where the gunshots were most dense. "White Queen. Report to me the situation of the base." Spencer said while driving the electric wheelchair to escape quickly. Currently the Caucasus experimental base is 62% damaged after Wolman Schindler died. Those zombies and negative energy bodies were out of control. I have sent B.O.W to control the situation, but there are still 50 black warriors all over the base. They are a great threat to B.O.W and can only be dealt with by the tyrant. Where's Chunyuyan? Where is it? At present, a large number of monitoring systems inside the base have been destroyed, and his exact location cannot be confirmed. It can only be deduced that his location is in the West District. In that direction, the signals of zombies, black warriors, and B.O.W are disappearing quickly. These bastards. Can you let Wesker and Chunyuyan meet? Queen Bai. Spencer cursed, and then said to Queen Bai, I will open the passage along the way and withdraw the B.O.W in this direction. Then do it. In a drainage pipe in the corner of the base, Chris supported Jill to find a dry place to sit down. Jill could barely move, but her spirit was still very weak, and even Chris had many wounds on his body. Chris said to the burly man in black combat uniform and pig face gas mask standing in front of them, thank you for saving us, but, you are also from the U.S.S? What happened here is beyond the control of ordinary people, so saving you is the only thing I can do now. In addition, my name is Hank, the former captain of the U.S.S Alpha team. The man said slowly. He actually sneaked in here ahead of time. It seems that Chunyuyan also had an idea about this base very early on. Chris said. I won't answer this question. What I can tell you is that this base is now controlled by the artificial intelligence White Queen, so we can't contact Boss Yan for the time being, so as not to expose our whereabouts. Because I think it's difficult for Boss Yan and the others to come to such a deep place among these countless monsters, Hank said. But Jill must be treated now. Chris looked awe-inspiring. She has only one choice if she wants to survive, follow me and complete the task. What is your mission? There was no mission before, but now there is. I need to close the White Queen and let this base be completely open. Are you crazy? The White Queen's host must be surrounded by countless B.O.Ws. That's why I'm here. Hank couldn't see any expression on his face wearing a gas mask, but his tone was extremely firm. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 462. 456. Wesker, Part 1. Chunyuyan and his team were rampaging in the Caucasus base. The firepower and protection brought by two T-51B power armors and one T-60 power armor were unparalleled, and they rushed forward without worrying about getting hurt. Now even Four Eyes is really interested in the performance of the power armor. If you don't consider her bad combat habit of wanting to study everything, the power armor that only needs to focus on killing is extremely terrifying. Those zombies rushed over and couldn't break through the protection of the power armor. Even the dark weapon of the Black Warrior could only leave a scratch on the armor. Of course, if they are given enough time and opportunities, they can still cut through the armor, or directly attack weak places such as joints, but Yi obviously will not give them this opportunity, and the cybernetic just now the super assembly robot is also covering by the side. Dispel the undead. Yi shouted, and an approaching ghost disappeared under the light of the light yellow magic light, and then she kicked a black warrior several meters away. Beltway laughed maniacally and pulled the trigger, and the specially made laser Gatling, Judgment instantly fired a flood of laser beams, burning the Darth Vader to charcoal. Four Eyes and Chunyuyan used ordinary laser Gatling, which was not as powerful as Beltway. They separated on both sides and kept clearing the B.O.W and undead that rushed around them. They try to choose corridors and lanes with narrow terrain, and B.O.W and undead are also fighting each other, so as to avoid the danger of being surrounded. However, this factory area is too big. After searching for a while, they found that the real secret of this factory lies underground. Chen also remembered that the place where he met the TA.L.O.S tyrant was actually underground, but that underground area was relatively independent, probably because he was worried that the TA.L.O.S tyrant would lose control during the experiment. They found a passage to go down to the underground area. Compared with the factory buildings and production lines on the ground, which are full of industrial style, the underground area is the usual style of umbrella. With white as the main color, clean and tidy laboratory, cutting-edge instruments, and of course those horrible test objects in the culture tank. At this moment, Chen Yuyan suddenly heard a burst of gunshots coming from the front. This burst of gunfire was very orderly, and it was obviously a rhythmic short burst of fire, definitely not the chaotic gunfire from the undead spirits using weapons. "There's someone over there," Chen Yuyan said immediately. "Let's go there. Beltway. Open the way." "Ha ha ha. Good." Beltway laughed loudly, came out of the power armor, took out a C4 from the container hanging on the back of the power armor, stuck it directly on the front wall, and plugged it in. Detonators and detonators. Boom. The violent explosion instantly blew the walls down, and the originally neat laboratory was immediately polluted by countless rubble and debris. Dust and burning sundries were everywhere. Chen Yuyan turned on the headlight of the power armor, walked all the way, turned on the loudspeaker and said loudly, "Is there anyone over there?" "Who is there?" "It's Boss Yan." "Be careful." A clear female voice came. Chen Yuyan recognized Rebecca's voice, and he hurried over, and sure enough, he saw Rebecca and Claire walking over supporting each other. They were obviously stunned when they saw the power armor full of mechanical punk style, but then they felt a sense of security, their tense nerves relaxed immediately, and they immediately fell to the ground. "I remember I told you to stay outside the base," Chen Yuyan said sternly. In fact, when the ghost told him that Claire and Rebecca ran into the base without authorization to find Chris who had lost contact, Chen Yuyan didn't intend to do anything at all. There was only one word in his mind: let them go. This place is full of undead and B.O.W, and there are many high-end goods among them, which is completely different from Raccoon City, which is full of the lowest level zombies. In this case, it is completely courting death to be distracted to find them. However, should it be that Claire and Rebecca still have the fate of the protagonist after all? He didn't die like this, and he found the underground passage, and just happened to meet a group of people on his side. Chen Yuyan thought to himself. Chris and the others lost contact. Claire wanted to distinguish. Stupid. Chris and Jill have their own missions. After they lost contact, I went to them. This is within the mission goal. But where do you come in? In this place, should I save you or go to Chris? Save you or running counter to the goal of the mission, maybe getting farther and farther away from Chris. Rescuing Chris is tantamount to letting you fend for yourself among countless undead. What do you think I should choose? Chen Yuyan said sharply. Rebecca bowed her head and remained silent. She knew a lot about Chen Yuyan in Raccoon City, so she could only accept the scolding. But she also knew that Chen Yuyan was scolding at this time, but she would still help them. She also tugged on Claire's skirt to tell her not to talk too much. After Chen Yuyan said a few words, there really was no other way. It's fine if you don't meet them. Now that you have met them, you can only take them and move on. Fortunately, both Claire and Rebecca have received military training. Although they are not as good as the elites like Four Eyes, they still have the ability to protect themselves to a certain extent. However, before they could move on, a deep, but now full of playful voice came from the opposite laboratory. "Oh, it seems that the miscellaneous fish have gathered together. This saves me lots of things." Yi's reaction was super fast. The moment the voice came out, he immediately waved his hand over there, "Dispel the undead." Swish. The pale yellow holy light flashed past, illuminating a man over there who was surrounded by thick black air, 2 meters tall, burly, with muscles like steel. Even Chen gasped when he saw his appearance. Albert Wesker. It's you. Chen was shocked. The appearance of Wesker in front of him has basically remained the same, but his body size has grown a lot, and his hairstyle is still neatly slicked back, but the hair color has changed from golden to lifeless silver gray. And to Chen surprise, he was still wearing sunglasses, but under the sunglasses, those scarlet eyes looked even more eerie and terrifying. He was casually wearing a scientific researcher's white lab coat, with no shirt underneath and a pair of leather gloves, but black combat trousers and leather boots were still on his legs. That's right, it's me. Was it a surprise? I thought Victor should have sent you the information. Wesker said lightly. Selling your body and even your soul for power, think about it, this is indeed something you can do. Chen sarcastically said. At this point, I can only say goodbye to each other, Mr. Chen. Wesker looked at the T-51B power armor Chen was wearing, and said with a sneer, why, don't you plan to get out of this iron coffin? Come out. You disappointed me, Mr. Chen. I originally thought that such things should not be the shackles of our power beyond human beings. Chen remained unmoved, and pointed the laser Gatling at Wesker, but it's okay for this thing to vaporize you. With that, he pulled the trigger. Shhhhhhhh. A large number of red laser beams are continuously emitted. Four Eyes and Beltway also fired at the same time, and the laser beams irradiated more intensively, like a giant net. But Wesker disappeared at that moment. He suddenly appeared 5 meters away on the left, and disappeared again when Chen and the others adjusted their guns, and this time appeared on the right again. His movements are so fast that it can't be added, it's almost like teleportation. Bastard! Beltway yelled loudly, and the final judgment in his hand continuously fired laser beams. Although some laser beams hit the target, they did not cause much damage to Wesker. However, Wesker kept moving left and right, making it impossible for everyone to aim at all. They could only be covered by the rate of fire of the laser Gatling, but once the firepower was dispersed, the damage caused would be even more limited. Beltway, I saw you in the company's materials. Wesker held his sunglasses with one hand, and came to him with a few teleportation movements, and gently placed the other hand on the final judgment. The company's previous evaluation of you was that you were dangerous, violent, lacking in organization, and unsuitable for a full-fledged member of the USS. However, when they saw that you were good at and addicted to explosions, they decided to recruit you go into the U.S.S because you're going to blow yourself up at any moment so they don't end up picking up the mess. As soon as he finished speaking, a burst of terrifying black smoke suddenly burst out from his hand, and then he squeezed it fiercely, and the barrel of the final trial was crushed into pieces by him like crushing plastic. Drink! Beltway roared angrily, throwing half of the final judgment at Wesker. Boom! Wesker easily dodged the blow, and then punched Beltway hard in the abdomen, and some black smoke could even be seen coming out of his body and bursting out from his back. With another kick, Beltway and the T-60 power armor, which weighed nearly 2 tons, were kicked 5 or 6 meters away. Even with Beltway's physique comparable to a brown bear, even with the protection of power armor, he just fell to the ground and couldn't get up. This is a struggle between beings far superior to human beings, and mortals should not participate. What do you think, Mr. Chen? Wesker turned his head to look at Chen, and moved his sunglasses down slightly. Those scarlet eyes, full of chaos and blood, stared straight at him. Four Eyes, you take Claire and Rebecca to find Chris, and take Beltway away. Here I will deal with it with Yi. Chen opened the power armor hatch and retreated from behind. Wesker's Xiaolu just now was actually telling Chen that the power armor did not pose any threat to him at all. The Four Eyes are not hypocritical, nodded, and immediately took a few steps back to check on Beltway's situation. She, Claire, and Rebecca opened the power armor, and the three of them worked together to drag Beltway out. Wesker just watched with cold eyes, and didn't mean to stop him at all. He said lightly, "You know what? I won't kill you right away. I'll leave you alone and let you watch me kill every one of your partners. After that, I will send you to Huanquan to reunite with them." Yi took a step forward, looked at Wesker, and said to Chenyuan without looking back, "Father, I want to fight with him. Fighting with him will definitely be fun. Be careful, he can be regarded as a magical creature now." Chenyuan said. "Of course I know." Yi smiled, and took 2 steps forward. Her long black hair hanging behind her head was windless. She raised her hand and gestured lightly, "Anti-death barrier." A holy magic circle suddenly appeared under Wesker's feet and began to rotate slowly. Immediately, some black mist was drawn from Wesker's body and dissipated in the air. However, Wesker was not moved at all, he just walked slowly towards Yi step by step. His footsteps were very slow and heavy. Every step he took would leave a clearly visible black shoe print on the ground. Every step he took, the holy magic circle would flicker and tremble violently, and it became somewhat dim. After just taking the 4th step, the anti-death barrier was directly crushed by Wesker. It turned into countless light spots and disappeared suddenly. "Little girl, if you only have this ability, you should cry and go back to your father." Wesker grinned a ferocious smile, and the scarlet light in his eyes became brighter. However, in the next second, Wesker was sent flying. His back was in close contact with a wall, and it smashed into pieces with a bang. But he immediately used the force of the impact to stop his retreat and stood up straight again. Looking at the deep hole under his feet, he knew that ordinary people could not do this at all. Yi slowly pulled out the long alloy sword, tilted his head and smiled, "I will never lose in front of my father." "Then let's try it." Wesker spread out his hands, and 2 groups of black mist condensed in his hands, and then actually formed 2 hideous and terrifying black long knives. Boom! The feet of the 2 exploded at the same time, creating a sonic boom almost instantly. Then there was a loud noise, and Yi and Wesker collided together, and they separated before the shockwave that was generated in an instant spread out. Wesker fully unfolded his teleportation-like movements. Under the black mist, he seemed to appear in several places at the same time. This speed could not even keep up with Yi. It seemed that he was hacking from different directions at the same time. Cut. But Yi guarded his surroundings tightly, not giving Wesker the slightest opportunity to take advantage of it. Dang 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 dang. 2 people and 3 weapons collided dozens of times in an instant. It was not until this time that the powerful shockwave generated by their initial collision reached Chenyuan, blowing away all the gunpowder smoke and dust around him. Thank you for the 1000 starting coins rewarded by Star Sea Rangers. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. All Heaven's Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 463. Wesker, below. Wesker and Yi's offensive and defensive transitions were extremely fast, and the sound of metal and iron clashing kept ringing. Thick black mist emanated from Wesker's 2 short knives, and with his attack, the black mist began to spread towards the surroundings. Chenyuan felt that his arms were a little tight and dry. He raised his hand to look, but found that the skin of his arms began to look a little tight, as if he had taken a bath and then blown it under the hairdryer for a while. But that's all, this phenomenon did not spread but recovered quickly. Perhaps, this is the erosive effect of this black mist. Maybe if it was an ordinary person, after staying under the black mist for a while, Wesker would directly turn him into an undead creature. However, this burst of black mist has very limited effect on both Chenyuan and Yi. Even if Yi is surrounded by black mist, his speed does not slow down at all. Sword and Wesker are constantly fighting. But Wesker's combat skills are clearly superior, and his speed is unparalleled. His movement speed seemed to be teleporting, and he appeared a few meters away in a flash. His attack was like a continuous river, without stopping for a second, forcing Yi to retreat again and again. Yi has been accustomed to using her super physical fitness to bully her opponents since before. No matter in terms of speed, strength, or physical strength, she is far superior to her opponents. But Wesker is not inferior to her at all, and even said that Wesker's strength and speed are even higher. Yi made a gesture, using the magic burning hand, a large number of flames spewed out, and rushed towards Wesker along the alloy longsword. In the world of Fallout 4, this move of hers is invincible, whether it is the transformed Iron Guard robot Ahab or the Mud Crab Queen, they are all hacked to death by this move. However, this time he was deflated in front of Wesker. I only saw Wesker's movement was like lightning, and suddenly a horizontal movement flashed to the front of Yi, and the two short knives crossed, firmly blocking the alloy longsword. Immediately afterwards, the black mist in his hand exploded, wrapping Yi's flame directly. As the black mist billowed, the flames went out immediately, and the red-hot longsword also cooled down, and even the sword began to be black. "It's over." A ferocious smile appeared on the corner of Wesker's mouth, and the two short knives in his hand slammed together. With a clang, the alloy longsword in Yi's hand shattered inch by inch. And the two short knives pierced towards Yi's heart and lower abdomen like two poisonous snakes. But at this moment, Yi's figure suddenly disappeared. She appeared a few meters away in an instant, exactly the same as Wesker's teleportation action before. Wesker's sure-kill strike actually fell through the cracks. He straightened up again and stood still, and said lightly, "It's kind of interesting, did you learn my way of moving so quickly?" Yi didn't speak, she threw away the half-alloy longsword left, and took a bare hand. Suddenly, a black mist exactly the same as Wesker suddenly appeared, and began to condense rapidly, and finally gathered in her hand, and more, as if there is substance. But Yi was a little strange, and said to himself, "Why is there no sword?" There was a sudden flash in Wesker's eyes, and he said slowly, "This weapon is a gift from death, and only those who are recognized by death can obtain weapons from the endless kingdom of death. Although you can use undead magic, but you can't, of course it will not be recognized by death, unless, I help you, to die." He gave a hideous smile. "You still know these things?" Chen Yuyan frowned, these words didn't fit Wesker's painting style. Wesker glanced at him, and replied with a cold snort, "Werman told me that, until he was dying, he thought that I was transformed into a death knight by him and would be under his control. He, stupid guy." Yi's complexion began to look a little ugly, she waved the black mist in her hand, and found that it still seemed to work, so she took another bottle of tiberium from her body and drank it. However, seeing her actions, Wesker seemed a little bit surprised, and then he laughed, "Sure enough. This strange green mineral was really brought by you. He. Do you want to drink?" Yi put the bottle in front of him. He, we found this substance in the ruins of the Underground Research Institute in Raccoon City, and we also found the highly mutated corpse of a high-ranking member of Umbrella's scientific research department. This substance is fatal to the human body, although we don't know why is it not effective for you, but maybe this is the reason why you surpass humans. Interesting, very interesting. Wesker spread his hands and did not continue to attack for the time being. "Why don't we join hands? Destroy this dirty human society and build a new world where superhumans like us, no, gods can stand on the high ground." Wesker said loudly. "A mere death knight dares to speak like this. You really are not afraid to flash your tongue. Now that you have started to come into contact with the world of magic, you should be able to understand your insignificance." Chen Yuyan sarcastically said. The devil would believe Wesker's nonsense about teaming up. The system's previous prompts made it clear Wesker and Spencer, whoever kills him can replace him and become the experimenter who monopolizes this world. Humph, I can indeed feel that there are existences infinitely stronger than me in the kingdom of death, but so what? What I want is this world. That's all. Yi took another step forward. It's a lot of nonsense, this world belongs to my father, and no one can take it away. How long are you going to hide behind this little girl? Wesker looked at Chen Yuyan and said. Chen Yuyan just smiled, and raised his finger to point to Yi. Wesker turned his head, only to find that the black mist in Yi's hand was changing. Green light began to appear in the black mist. Not only that, her eyes also began to flash green light, just like the tiberium mine. Powerful power began to condense in Yi's body, and the energy of the tiberium mine was completely absorbed by her. Wesker slowly took off his sunglasses and threw them aside. The pupils in those scarlet eyes suddenly began to shrink into terrifying vertical pupils. He said slowly, "Oh, this time is really interesting." Facing the pressure from Yi, Wesker finally started to get serious. It was too late and then it was too fast. Yi suddenly burst up, using the same movement method as Wesker to move to his side in an instant, and punched out the fist wrapped in black mist. Boom! Yi's punch directly touched Wesker's short knife, but she was not cut. The black mist wrapped around her fist suddenly burst out a burst of black air mixed with green light spots, which was accompanied by terrifying power. Wesker was actually kicked back several steps by this punch. However, before he could stabilize his figure, a warning sign suddenly appeared. But it was too late at this time. He could only adjust his posture and use his back to catch the blow. Boom! A huge force came, and Wesker was sent flying more than 5 meters, and hit the wall hard. After the battle, it was the first time he was knocked down. At this time, Chen Yuyan appeared in the same position as before, and his fist was also covered with a faint green light. He looked at the embarrassed Wesker, smiled and said, "Didn't you tell me not to hide? Now I'm here." He put on a posture while talking. Wesker is different from the Talos tyrant he fought before. After all, he is in human form. So although his physical fitness is not as good as Yi's, the fighting skills he learned before are still useful. Wesker stood up slowly and wiped the black blood from the corner of his mouth. "Very good, I'm waiting." Boom! Before he finished speaking, he dodged suddenly, and almost at the same time, there was a violent explosion at the place where he was standing just now. After all, Wesker couldn't dodge completely, and the shock wave of the explosion threw him away again. With a click, Chen Yuyan pulled the bolt of the gun. An excited smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and fired a burst of shots in the direction of Wesker. What he held in his hand was a burst shotgun. Ha 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 ha! Let me die first. The current Chen Yuyan doesn't have the fists shining just now, the posture is standard, and he looks like he wants to rush up and fight, which is clearly the firepower infected by Beltway mad. Boom! 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 The burst shotgun continuously fired projectiles with explosive energy, but after Wesker came back to his senses, the action fully unfolded again, and he couldn't be aimed at all as he kept teleporting. And because of the AoE power of the burst shotgun, Yi didn't dare to rush to help at this time. Wesker looked extremely embarrassed. He was hit by several projectiles and exploded on his body. If it was an ordinary person, this explosion would be a hole and he died immediately. But Wesker is still intact, but the black mist on his body has dimmed a bit. But he still seized the opportunity to bully Chen Yuyan, and the two short knives stabbed out like poisonous snakes. Although Chen Yuyan looked crazy just now, his heart was extremely calm. He immediately blocked Wesker's short knife with a burst shotgun, and then he smashed the shotgun at Wesker's face. A few tricks were exchanged. Yi also rushed to help immediately, and the three characters fought into a group, as if the wheels of a car were constantly rotating, their positions were constantly changing, and the sound of gold and iron clashing and explosions continued to resound. Wesker is starting to feel a little uncomfortable now. After Yi Yi rejoined the battle group, he obviously felt that Yi Yi has become stronger again. This girl's learning speed is really too fast. She has already learned all the combat skills he used not long after they fought. She even learned the undead magic to manipulate the black mist. This kind of learning ability can only be described as against the sky. Wesker knew that this black mist was produced by his own magic on the one hand, and on the other hand was formed by the black chimney above the factory, a magic building called the Dark Sky. This black mist has a great strengthening effect on undead, which can also be manipulated to be used as a weapon. But Yi Yi can still control the black fog generated by the Dark Sky. Moreover, after Yi Yi swallowed the tiberium mine, her strength and speed were completely upgraded to a new level. The black mist wrapped around her hands, preventing Wesker's dagger from hurting her, and the tiberium brought the green energy kept exploding, causing him constant injuries. Although Chen is now the weakest of the three, it is only relative. What he lacks are these supernatural fighting methods, but his physical fitness and strength are also at the same level as Wesker. What annoys Wesker is that Chen still has a very accurate positioning of himself. He is just cooperating with Yi Yi's attack and constantly looking for opportunities around him. Not only that, but Chen moves are extremely obscene, and he uses all kinds of bad tricks, such as inserting eyes, teasing, millennium killing, spreading green powder from Thai mines. Just like a gangster fighting on the street, he finally sneaked into the special forces and studied with the ability to kill. In a word, he is a gangster who knows martial arts. It has to be said that Wesker's judgment is still correct. This is why Chen is more willing to fight against humanoid monsters than to fight against monsters like Talos Tyrant who have completely lost their humanoid appearance. After playing for a while, Wesker began to retreat. Because in fact, although Chen lacks supernatural fighting methods, why not Yi Yi and Wesker? Yi Yi can only know some low-level magic that Lin Huo gave her and the undead magic that manipulates the black mist that he has learned and sold just now. Wesker can also only know some of the innate abilities of Death Knights, and some abilities he himself does not have. Can be used skillfully. This is actually a bottleneck period, which will happen to experimenters, especially when they have just moved from an ordinary world to a magical world. Such a bottleneck period will become more and more obvious. That's why it is necessary to continue to experience in other worlds, so as to obtain the matching strength. The three of them played for 20 minutes, only to find out at the end that the three of them were weak in offense and strong in defense, and they were always a little bit meaningless in the end. Wesker is already an undead creature, and the black mist also has healing and strengthening effects on him, and the power of the tiberium mine is also strengthening and healing Yi Yi and Chen. The black mist is more durable, and although the tiberium mine has a higher energy level, it will also be exhausted. However, looking at Yi Yi and Chen in front of him, the murderous intent in Wesker's heart could no longer be concealed. His anger almost swallowed his sanity. He only had one thought, to completely crush the pair of guys in front of him who are called father and daughter but are actually dogs, as he thinks. Thinking this way in my heart, I saw Wesker's muscles swell again, and the surrounding black mist became thicker, and a terrible coercion came from him. When he folded his hands together, the two short knives instantly merged into one, and then he slashed down with all his strength. None of the three people present knew that this was the Death Knight's innate ability, Fatal Strike. Thank you for the 10,000 starting coins rewarded by Shiliang. Thanks to Zingai Rangers, Mao Passing By, and Book Friend 201807262223038594 for rewarding 1000 starting coins. Thank you for the 100 starting coins rewarded by Sakura Wyume. All Heavens Unlimited Base. Author, Jingde Ren. Chapter 464. 458. 458 Retreat. As soon as Chen saw Wesker's current state, he felt something was wrong, and he shouted, "Yi Yi! Get out of here!" At the same time, a large handful of green tiberium powder was spilled out. However, Wesker is now on high alert for this green thing, and it is absolutely impossible to let these powders get close. The black mist rolled over his body, and immediately blew away the tiberium powder. At this moment, Wesker's strength has been condensed to the extreme, and his body is almost completely shrouded in a black mist that looks like a substance, and his appearance can hardly be seen, only the pair of scarlet eyes are still in the black mist constantly flashing. Die! Wesker roared, slashing down with the long knife in his hand. A slender broadsword slashed down through the black mist with a terrifying momentum. There was a barbed skull on the handle of this broadsword. The blade gleamed coldly, making it even more terrifying in the billowing black mist. The power of the knife caused the surrounding dead air and black mist to roll at the same time, and countless faces with painful expressions could be faintly seen in the black mist. Yi and Chen were already dodging, but Wesker's knife had a very wide range, and his steps didn't stop at all, and he slashed straight at Chen back. It is impossible to hide at this time. Chen had already seen that Yi was about to turn around and defend the knife forcefully, but he knew that Yi couldn't stop it. There was no time to think, so Chen pushed Yi away with one shoulder, and at the same time took out a T-51B power armor from his personal space to block in front of him, and activated the bulletproof mode on his combat uniform at the same time. Swish! The knife light with black air slashed down fiercely, hitting the empty T-51B power armor right in the middle. The protection of the power armor was easily cut open, directly protruding from the back, and slashed on Chen chest. The powerful electromagnetic field formed under the bulletproof mode of the combat uniform also affected the slashing trajectory of the long knife, but it was still directly broken through. Almost at the same time, a huge force slammed the power armor into Chen body, causing him to suffer a second attack. With a puff, Chen spat out a mouthful of blood, and a deep knife wound was cut on his chest, even several ribs were cut off. But fortunately, the power armor resisted most of the power, and the magnetic field generated by the bulletproof combat suit also made the metal long knife feel like it was splitting on the smooth bubbles. These finally saved his life. But even so, now Chen was knocked into the wall by the incomplete power armor, the wound on his chest was bleeding continuously, and his own consciousness was also a little blurred. After this shocking blow, Wesker's footsteps were also a little vain. This move even completely drained the magic power in his body, almost to the point where he could not maintain the integrity of his body. All I saw was that large chunks of corpse spots began to appear on his skin, some places even started to rot, and even a few ribs were exposed, and the hideous long knife in his hand returned to two short knives again. Status: Undead creatures have no physical strength, but rely on the energy of undead magic to act. In the black mist generated by the dark sky, their undead magic energy will be replenished, otherwise, they can only replenish it by absorbing the surrounding death air. Therefore, undead creatures are at ease in places like cemeteries, but if they are replaced by places like shopping malls and supermarkets, they can only rely on the undead magic stored in their bodies to support their actions, and they will become weaker and weaker. Now Wesker is in this state, the consumption of the fatal blow is too high, and even the dark sky can't replenish it for a while. When Yi saw his father being chopped into the air with a knife, he immediately burst into anger, and rushed towards Wesker recklessly. Under the fury, the girl's speed and strength were even better, and the flames of anger burned in her eyes. At this time, the power around Yi suddenly began to condense rapidly, and this situation was exactly the same as when Wesker used the fatal blow before. In the midst of extreme anger, Yi actually learned what he learned and put it into practice, and he learned the fatal blow of the Death Knight's innate ability. Wesker finally showed a look of surprise, and even a trace of fear. Although Yi didn't learn this trick directly from the engraving of the soul like him, but he also learned this trick in a decent way, at least he has the appearance. If combined with Yi's strength shown before, coupled with the fact that he himself is in a weak state, This will really kill him. Yi's tide-like attacks continued, and her aura became more and more intense. She was brewing a fatal blow, a surefire move, in the midst of her constant attacks. And at this moment, out of the corner of Wesker's eye, he saw Chen Yuyan standing up again little by little. Although the wound on his body was deep enough to see the bones, and a lot of blood was still flowing, he still stood up unyieldingly. Wesker finally made up his mind to escape, whether it was the indomitable Chen Yuyan, or Yi, who had the ability to learn like a monster, terrified him. At this time, the terrifying aura around him was finally condensed, and Yi's hands were wrapped in a black mist with traces of green light, and he shot towards Wesker suddenly. Boom! Terrible forces collided fiercely. Wesker crossed his hands in front of him to resist, but the two short knives in his hand were broken by Yi's blow. A powerful force hit Wesker's body, and he was thrown into the air suddenly. One arm was also broken, and he fell to the ground after flying in mid-air for a while. Wesker was sent flying farther than expected because he jumped backwards in the direction of Yi at a critical moment. He took this opportunity to get out of the fight. One hand was broken and the other was twisted in a twist. He left quickly in a strange posture. Yi originally wanted to chase after him, but when he turned around and saw Chen Yuyan's miserable condition, he had no choice but to throw Wesker away, and ran back to support him. "Dad, Dad. How are you doing? Turn inside." At this time, she didn't have the mighty and domineering look just now. She was clearly a good girl. Yi took out a bottle of liquid tiberium and poured it on Chen Yuyan's wound, and fed him some more. Chen Yuyan stood up completely with a strong force, and now seeing Wesker fleeing with serious injuries, he let out his breath again, and sat on the ground with a plop, with bursts of severe pain from the wounds all over his body, which almost made him feel sick. Asphyxia. Fortunately, the energy of the tiberium mine began to be absorbed by him, the wound began to heal, the bleeding stopped, and his physical strength recovered a little. Seeing Yi's anxious expression, Chen Yuyan patted the back of her hand and said, "I'm fine, just take a rest." And the moment he raised his hand, he suddenly discovered that some dark green crystalline objects had grown on his hand.